Okay, welcome to these videos. Purpose is to introduce the graphing calculator in Math 141. We don't use the graphing calculator that much. There's about 4 things you need to be able to do, but you need to be able to do them really well. In this first one, we're going to talk about 2 things. How to use your TIs. I'll give you several ways to evaluate algebraic expressions, and the other thing we're going to do is talk about how to graph functions. In this first one, we have a polynomial and we want to evaluate when x is negative 2 and when x is 3. So what we're going to do is we're just going to enter the expression like that. And once we do that, we're going to edit the expression and replace negative 2 with 3. I'll show you how to do that. So when you do that, we go like this. 5, the minus button is right here. 3, you can just use parentheses. Now the negative button is down here below. Don't use the minus button, use the negative button on the bottom. 2, close parentheses, minus, left parenthesis, negative 2, close parenthesis, squared. Either use the squared button or the exponent, either way. I get 7. Now to edit it, this is really important. You hit second enter. That allows you to edit the previous expression. All you got to do now is use your arrow keys. You delete the negative, replace negative 2 with 3, go over here, with your arrow keys, delete the negative, and replace negative 2 with 3. So there you go, I get negative 13. Now the second way to evaluate expressions is to use what's called the store feature. Let's evaluate this rational expression when x is negative 2 and 3. What we're going to do is this. What we're going to do is we're going to store negative 2 in x, and then we're going to enter this expression and evaluate it. And then we're going to store 3 in x and evaluate the same expression. If you ever want to get rid of stuff on your home screen, you could just hit the clear button. Okay, so how do you enter negative 2 and store it in x? You hit negative 2, the store button is down here, and your x is up here, see? So then what you do is when you hit enter, it gives you that value. Now we enter the expression. Be careful with your parentheses. You get parentheses x minus 3, close parenthesis, divided by, left parenthesis, x plus 1. And when you hit enter, you get 5. Now how do you evaluate the same rational expression when x is 3? You just go 3 store in x, hit enter, and then all you have to do is enter that expression. Remember, it's saved. To get that expression, you just hit second enter. You're going to have to hit second enter twice. Once gives you back to the 3 store in x. Hit second enter again and allows you to edit that expression. So when you hit enter now, it's evaluating that expression with the new value stored in x, which is, you should get 0. Pretty nice. Let's do another one. Now this one, this is my favorite way to do it. We're going to evaluate x to the 2/3 power when x is negative 8 and when x is 64 using function notation. So think of this as f of x equals x to the 2/3 power. We're going to find f of negative 8 and we're going to find f of 64. So first of all, we're going to enter x to the 2/3 into y1. y1's up here, so you go like this. y1. If you already have some stuff in there, you just hit the clear button. Now x to the 2/3, your x button is right here, remember. I'm going to use my exponent key, and then just 2 divided by 3. Now, and hit enter. Depending on your operating system, you may have to enter that slightly differently. Now this is really important. How do I get back to my home screen, which is where I do my calculations? The way you get back to your home screen is to hit second and quit. That brings you back to your home screen. I'm going to also clear all this stuff. So now this is even more important. How do you enter y1 of negative 8 now? This is important. You hit vars, go over to y-vars, and hit enter twice. The second time it pastes y1 on your home screen. Left parentheses, negative 8, close parentheses. So that's f of 2/3. That's f of negative 8, I should say. F of negative 8 is 4, because negative 8 to the 2/3 power is 4. Now how do you find the 64 to the 2/3 power? Remember how to evaluate the expression? You hit second enter, and all you have to do now is move over to the negative 8 and replace it with a 64. Hit enter again, and the answer is 64 to the 2/3 power is 16. Okay, the second thing we're going to do with our calculator is show how to graph functions. Suppose you wanted to graph y equals x squared plus 20. Again, your graphing buttons are all on the top here. So for the most part, we're going to be using those when we graph. Y equals, remember, is up here. I already have something in there, so let's clear it and enter x squared. X, the square button is right here, plus 20. And before you graph, well, you hit enter. Before you graph it, though, you have to tell your calculator what window to use to get a good graph. So if you go over to the zoom button, it gives you some windows. A nice place to start is zoom standard. That would give you -10 to 10 on x and -10 to 10 on y. And look what happens when you hit enter. This is what it gives you. It gives you nothing, and that's pretty common. Your calculator does not know what window to use. You have to tell it, and that's the hard part. If you look at the y-intercept is 20. So if you hit this window button, it gives you the window. You can alter it. Let's change y max. Since it starts at 20, let's change y max to 100. And when you hit enter, now it's graphing it with that new window, and that looks a little bit better. There's this problem on the y-axis. It's all darkened because it's putting tick marks every single pixel. If you hit the window button again, you don't want that many tick marks. See, the y scale tells you the tick marks on the y-axis. Instead of every 1 unit, let's have a tick mark every, say, 10 units. There you go. So this would be a good graph for this function here. So let's talk about that. What does it mean to say you have a good graph? At least in my class, if I ask you to do this on a quiz or test, a good graph has the right shape, has the x and y intercepts if there are any, it shows the axes, and it has between 10 and 20 tick marks. Okay, so let's practice that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to enter this function here. It's a quadratic function. We're going to try to make the graph look kind of like this. So go back over to y equals. Let's just clear this and go 0.03 x squared. Here's your x key squared plus 1.7 x minus 3. Again, and hit enter. A good starting point might be to just go to zoom and try the standard one. And let's see, would you say that's a good graph? The answer is no. It seems like it's going to have more of the curve. So how do you know how to change your window? Well, you just got to play around with it. If you hit the window button, it seems that x has to be wider though. Let's try -100 on x to 100. It's good to go up powers of 10. And so we're getting that. That's getting there. Let's make y min go lower and y max go lower too. So hit the window button, change y min to -100. I'm going to change y max to a positive 100 just to see what it looks like. Let's not worry about the tick marks till later. That's getting pretty good. I'm going to make x max a little bit smaller. It doesn't have to be quite so big. But let's not be perfectionist here. That's pretty good, except the only thing now is I have too many tick marks. Remember, we only want around 10 or so, 10 to 20. So instead of every 1 unit, how about making the x scale every, I don't know, 10 units? And instead of every 1 unit, let's make y scale every 10, or how about every 20 units? There you go. So that's a pretty good window. I'm gonna say that's a good window, as long as it's close. The window that I chose was -100 to 50 on x with x scale 10, -100 to 100 on y with y scale 20. Okay, let's do a couple more. Do this on your own. See if you can enter this equation on your graphing calculator and play around with your window until the graph looks kind of like this. Hit the pause button and try it. Okay, this is what window I got. To get a window close to this, I chose -100 to 200 on x with x scale every 20, and for y I chose -4000 to 4000 with y scale 500. Let's do one more. Enter this function, y equals x to the 4th minus 50x squared minus 2 on your graphing calculator. Play around with the window till you get a good graph that meets those 4 criteria. Go ahead and hit the pause button. Okay, the one I got the looks like the husky graph, or some of you might say the cougar graph. To get a good graph, I chose -10 to 10 with x scale 2, and and then y min -1000, y max 4000 with y scale 500 I should say. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.